had the statement put out by the club yesterday evening about potentially a buyer. Still waiting, obviously, for confirmation of that. Has that given people a lift, or are you just waiting to see something definitive at this stage?
No, I think it's come a really important moment. You know, we're 1 week in. There was a lot of doubts last week about getting to that fixture, the away fixture, and obviously similar doubts this week. So that announcement, slightly vague, I must admit, but you know, there's obviously a lot of work going on in the background, and the energy levels have been high this morning in training. To be fair, you know, it's good to have some good positive news, and hopefully they can fulfil that with the eventuality of a new investor being brought in.
As you said, do you feel have put a spring in the step this morning, has it, for the players?
Yeah, absolutely. And the staff, you know, there's a lot of people been under a lot of duress over the last month. You know, people not being paid, which is public record. But it seems that the two owners, Colin and Jason, have managed to find an investor.
Have they spoken to you directly? Because presumably you're sort of acting as sort of conduit between the owners and the players.
Yeah, they've kept all the senior members of staff on the commercial side and the rugby side involved. We've got no real detail of who they are. It's in strictest confidence. They've assured me that it's imminent, and they are rugby fans.
How difficult has it been for you as coaching and for the players to concentrate fully on preparing for games when that's hanging over you?
Well, I think subliminally you don't think it is. You know, you manage to push your way through, and this sort of male-dominated sort of arena that we all work in, people sort of put on the brave face. But I think our result last week shown the effect that it had. I've managed to put together a competitive squad here over the last 6 months, and we weren't competitive at the weekend, and that was from a lack of a couple of things: the mindset of people being unsure and being anxious, and the mental state, but also the physical state of not being able to knock them about in training, which you need to do in rugby. You know, it's not football, it's a contact sport, and unless you practice these things on a regular basis, you can't really attain the levels of abrasiveness and fitness that you do in a game.
Could be quite an emotional day on Sunday, because the fans have been worried as to whether or not they'll have a club here to support this year, and this is their first chance to come in and back you and the players. Yeah,
and the support base has been fantastic, generally through social media and personal messages to me and the squad and all the people who work here, and I think it could be a great day. I've got 1 or 2 injuries, so I can't say the rugby might be a great day at this moment in time, but we'll see how they come through over the next couple of days. But rugby, certainly in the southwest and the South Midlands, is a big sport. You know, it's not like Manchester, where I come from, where it's football. So there's a lot of people, big community club, a lot of sponsors come from the local community. The supporters obviously do, and a lot of the players come from the local area. So it's been a big deal. I didn't realise how much it mattered to the people of Worcester, but it's been a refreshing sort of outlook of how much people do care about the club.
I presume you're hoping that'll create a great atmosphere on Sunday, which will hopefully spur your players on as well.
Yeah, I do, and I think the players are up for it. Even though our result wasn't great last weekend, there was no lack of endeavour or effort. It was just the top 2 inches were missing, and hopefully we can pull one of those back this week in training. Thank you.
Steve, in terms of the game on Sunday, I think the statement suggested that some funds have been made available to ensure that game goes ahead. Do you have assurance that game will definitely go ahead on Sunday?
Some what have been made available?
Some funds.
Funds, sorry. As far as I'm concerned, the game's on. I've been told nothing untoward. We're preparing as the game's on. We're on BT. The BT people are here today. So everybody, all buttons have been pressed to go.
The general consensus last weekend that this weekend would be a better judge of this team given what happened last week. So are you confident this weekend will be a little bit more of a cohesive performance than maybe it was last weekend?
Well, I'd like to think so, but you never know. Playing Exeter, we've had a good start and we've had a poor start. We're obviously through the fallout of what's going on. There's a couple of players who have been upset, and one who's wanting to leave, and 2 who are not in the correct headspace. So we'll deal with that accordingly. And to be fair, we're all in uncharted waters here You know, it's not happened to many clubs this. 25 years ago, I think Richmond was the last one, and I was still playing then, fortunately. I didn't have to put up with all this political mess. But we'll be competitive as best we can be.
In terms of those injuries, are you going to have any of the boys that were not here last week back this week? So I think Ted, Dylan,
No, not fit, no.
Steve, on Saturday you said you didn't know whether the new owners would keep you here or not. You had any assurances one way or another?
Will keep me here?
Yeah.
No, I've had no assurances. I've not met them. I don't know who they are. But we'll take that as it comes, really. You know, I think the job of this place is in such a bad state financially that it needs rebooting, and from bottom to top. And if they bring other people in to do that, then fine. I can work with anybody.
Have you had any conversations with the guys on the non-rugby side of the business that haven't been paid and haven't been in jobs since last month?
Well, everybody on the non-rugby side of the business have been paid 65%.
Yeah.
There's only half a dozen people on the rugby side of the business who haven't been paid. And the heads of department are as hard-working, as conscientious as the rugby side of the business. And they've got a good team spirit over there, but it's just anxious times for them. And let's be honest, you don't get to work. You enjoy going to work, but you wouldn't get to work if you didn't get paid, would you? Nobody would. So the means to an end is getting paid, and you know, not everybody's fortunate to be a professional sportsman where they do earn, you know, well in excess of above the national average. But most people who work here, some are casual workers, some are workers who earn the average wage or below, and you can't cope with not being paid, and that's where their anxieties come from, and they've voiced it in a very professional manner. There's been no sort of union type sort of behaviour. It's been collective, and it's been politely put to the senior management who are trying to deal with it.
Do you worry that if they don't receive the full money by the end of the week, that they won't turn up on Sunday, and then things like money behind the bar doesn't come in because people aren't putting pints and selling burgers and doing hospitality and all that stuff, that is vital to get some money coming into this place?
Yeah, it is vital, but again, I think, as I said a minute ago, it needs rebooting. It's in a dire state, obviously, and all money is welcomed, and I think the current owners are doing everything behind the scenes to ensure that the game goes on, which means staff being paid, suppliers being paid, workforce who are coming in, casual workers, and everything else in running any commercial organisation. And I can only say that they put a press statement out yesterday to say that heads of terms were agreed and were going to be formally signed today, so we await that.
Have you still got the same complement of non-rugby staff from the last time you had a home match? Has there been any redundancies or resignations or anything like that?
There's been no redundancies. I think there's a couple of resignations, which just people who have, but you know, the hospitality world is a casual world for workers. You know, people do move around, and you can't stick around if you're not getting paid.
What's the resignation situation?
To be fair, Nick, I don't know exactly the situation because I run the rugby department, but all senior staff are still there. All senior managers are still there. There may be some people below them who have decided to go elsewhere. But again, that happens I run a call centre in Manchester. Retention of staff on or around the national living wage is difficult to keep. So it'll be the same in a lot of businesses. That.
Have you noticed any dip in the players since last weekend because of the result? I mean, there's everything going around, and there was a sort of, I don't know, the spirit going into the season of like, by hook or by crook, we're going to play and we're going to get on with this. But when you then lose the first game, do you have to pick them up because of that as well as everything else?
Well, I think Worcester have done that for 25 years, haven't they? Lost the first games. So for me, it's very simple. The job I have is to get the players in the best physical, mental condition to play each game. And if we're good enough on the day, we'll challenge and win. The medical side of the business is run very well now, I think, and the medics think, and the programmes that they fill in after post games and stuff. They came in 9 out and 10 out of 10s enthused on Tuesday to train, which, you know, they trained very well yesterday. Again, sound like one of them coaches who's losing games saying we train well but we don't play well. There are a lot of other things that have happened away from here which we can't control. You know, what happens, the young lads who are recently married, just bought houses, new babies on the horizon, or getting sleepless nights, and you throw in the worry of not having a job. It does affect people. And, you know, I'm not a sports psychologist in any way, shape or form, but what I do know is how to look after people. And to a man, they've all delivered. Now, I can't say they've delivered in performance because we got a good hiding at weekend off a very good London Irish team. But for the first 10 minutes of the game, we were in it. And that shows we got the preparation right. We just ran out of steam. And I said at the end of last season, before all these shenanigans came about, that we'd have one of the fittest hard-working teams, and I believe we will have that. But if you don't do your contact for a month and you don't play pre-season games, then you're behind the 8 ball like you can't believe. And even though I was bullish and enthused last week going into that game, I'm not out there playing. Yeah. And once you do get, we had a series of maybe 25, 30 phases against London Irish, and we had an opportunity to score. We didn't, and we end up 80 yards back, and London Irish score. That's when London Irish grow a leg. Their enthusiasm gets bigger, and ours dips. That's just sport.
Have you been able to have contact now, times this week?
Yeah, we've done a bit. To be fair, Ali, we don't do a lot of contact. I've not done contact for 10 years, but we do get exposed in games. So what we try to do is simulate that as much as we can. We had a referee in, etc., etc. So we're not just idly climbing into each other at training, because with a small squad you can't do that also. But it's just getting that sort of... But we'll be better this week for it.
Physically, you think you'll be considerably better, do you think?
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you talk about those two sides, the mental and the physical. I appreciate what you said about players turning up and being motivated and driven and all of those things. I'm sure they are. How easy or difficult is it for you to actually tell how your players are?
Well, we do have certain systems behind the scene which we can cope for them physically, but I think with the group, certainly the group here who appear to be a very hard-working, honest group, we ask them in various guises to tell us, and we have sessions where they sit down and they tell us how they're feeling. We get to a point where, you know, one particular lad has just had a newborn baby, his sleep patterns all over the shop, he's anxious about the situation, so we pull him out of training a couple of times. He just does a little bit less, because we know when people are in that frame of mind that hamstrings, calf strains come along, and we have seen that, to be fair, and that'll be represented by the selection we make. Little injuries that you'd never take, you know, because people aren't on it.
How comfortable are you with the information you're receiving from the owners?
I'm comfortable, yeah. I know no more than what the press statement says.
Isn't that odd?
Not really. I think they're in a position where there's a lot of artillery been aimed at them, rightly or wrongly, and I think they are genuinely trying to do the best for the situation. And if they know I have a lot of experience, and I don't need sort of an arm around me about the situation. I know that if they bring the right investor in, or the new owner, then I'll have dialogue with him, her, whoever it may be, and we'll plan a way forward. So if it means keeping it confidential up until it's doing the deal, then that's the way it is.
Is it realistic for a bid to have come essentially out of the blue over the last couple of days without going into administration, which of course has been the stated aim of the owners throughout this process? Is that realistic? And how realistic is that, not just that in itself, but for that to come to fruition in time to save Worcester's bacon in the next 48 hours?
Yeah, in normal life, they've pulled the rabbit out of the hat, let's be honest. But, you know, sometimes businessmen don't show their cards early, and they wait for businesses to be absolutely distressed before they come in, and that might be the situation. What I require and what the club require and the players, sponsors and supporters is this to be done as quickly as possible.
And how quickly is possible? Like, what's possible? Because you're playing on Sunday here, as previously discussed, there's a ton of things that need to happen and people need to be paid to enable that to happen. Is that possible? It's Wednesday.
I don't know, if I'm honest. And I'm not here to fluff it. I'm here to say it as I see it. If people aren't paid and suppliers aren't paid, then I don't think logistically the game can go on. However, as sat here at 11:30, I'm pretty confident the game will go on from what the information I've been given this morning. So, big things like stewarding, ambulances, all the sort of normal stuff which nobody sees is in place. Catering is being put in place. Again, I can only tell you what I know. The positive for me is I find it difficult to believe that a statement would be made to the national press yesterday if it can't be fulfilled.
Do you know, Steve, if you may not know the answer to this, but have Premiership Rugby so given a cut-off time by which they have to have a cast-iron guarantee everything will be in place for this game to go ahead?
Well, I'm assuming they will do. To be fair, it's a question I've never had to answer before, because I don't think anybody's been in this position where you're drumming through the regulations of what is needed. But I'm assuming that those hurdles will have to be gone over for to get the game on. You know, there must be some stipulations that the medics have been paid, etc., etc., etc. All of the medical staff have been paid here. All of the insurances are in place. I think it's the physical ability of opening the gates under the safest realms that they can do, and people can enjoy themselves and get a beer. I think that's what they're trying to do.
Clearly it's been very tough for everybody, particularly those who haven't been paid. But in terms of the playing side of it, yes, it's tough for all the players. But those players who came here in the summer because you were here, they came for you, if you like. That must be a difficult sell now. Dreadful, yeah. Although my only solace in that is it was done in good faith, because I'm one of them. Let's be honest. I came in January, February to work out how to turn this place round, put in a plan, and you know, I'm also one who hasn't been paid. So I'm a big believer in things will come right in the end if the right people come in. And from what I'm gathering, I don't know who they are. I would tell you if I did. I don't know who they are, but they are very close to investing into the club.
When do you think it'll be done by? When do you expect it to be done by? Have you given any time frames?
Well, I think the time frames were public record yesterday, that it will be agreed, a heads of terms is agreed in principle, I think it said, and will be signed today.
So you expect an announcement by close of play?
Well, I think logistically, Nick, so to manoeuvre the supplies that are needed to run this stadium with 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 people in it, we're on Thursday tomorrow, aren't we? And because of the very delicate, fragile financial position of the place, I don't think anybody's going to drop stuff off to you without being paid first. So I think that'll be a sign that the game's on if we see a few Ocado wagons driving into the place.
Steve, you just talked about obviously other people being paid, and obviously you have to sit here as the sort of the public face, as it were, and you've also talked about yourself not being paid. I mean, how has that been for you personally?
Well, that for me isn't a major distress. I think that there's always somebody worse off than you in life, and there's a lot of people here who, although they work in the sports business, don't earn fantastic salaries. And there's not only me, there's other senior management who who were prepared to wait for our salaries, and they've caught some of mine up. To be fair, other people they've caught up 100%, and some people are still on 65%. But I think if you lead the business in the way I do, then you've got to deliver in that way. I can't be going home checking in the hole in the wall in Cheltenham that I've been paid, and there's a kid who earns 25 grand a year, can't pay his rent. That won't happen. And there was some misconstrued information. I paid for buses. I haven't. I offered, because I would do. Adam Hewitt paid for the coach last week, for the company van to take the kit around, because he knows as a loyal supporter and sponsor that the place needs help. And what more do you want from your sponsors and your supporters? In your hour of need, you show that goodwill.
Steve, this might be an unfair question to ask you, but do you feel like there needs to be, whatever happens with new investment, the current owners need to have a clean break from it, because there's been a lot of mistrust now that's been sown around the club about what they've been doing, and if they were to keep a minority share, for example, stay involved, there's still, for a lot of people, their involvement there, and so therefore a difficulty for them to really fully commit, knowing what's happened in the last few months.
Yeah, I mean, inside, that's probably the thought process of a lot of people. I think not steering the business towards administration, it is a really good factor, and good on behalf of the current owners, because I think everybody who didn't understand the insolvency process were just saying, stick it in admin, you're okay. But there's so many ramifications of that. Forget your league points, forget your relegation, forget your P share, but that means all your local suppliers are gone. Whether it's your kit supplier, whether it's your fruit and veg person who feeds the players, they don't get paid. So they're intending not to put it through that route. To then go, as we said with Ali, pull the rabbit out of the hat and find an investor is another remarkable feat, if I'm honest. If they get them. In the world of sport, after COVID, with the cost of living prices, there's not many. There's lots of very wealthy people, but not wealthy enough to run rugby business, which effectively lose a lot of money. So they will do. I'm pretty sure they'll do the best deal for the club, and if that means them having some sort of relationship with the new owners, to be fair, that's not my area. That's up to them, and I think all of us, again, from me to the cleaners, to the chefs, to the supporters and sponsors, it needs a fresh start. It needs a reboot, as I said, and a reboot might be having a good look at ourselves and how do you make Worcester a competitive Premiership rugby team, not just a Premiership rugby team. Have they ever been competitive? That might sound brutal, but I come from an environment where everything's competitive, and Worcester hasn't been. So if the new investor has the same outlook as me, then I think we can draw a line under the sand and start again.
This is probably an unfair question for you as well, Steve. You're getting used to those now. But as the face of it, at the head of it, sitting in front of us here today, why should Worcester supporters have any confidence that this is going to happen after all the false dawns and the false promises and the lack of payments and the constant veil of uncertainty?
Yeah, and Ali, after the London Irish game, I said the same in the press conference. Let's hope it's not another false dawn. And, you know, what's the old adage, you know, don't talk the talk and not walk the walk. You know, these people have got to deliver. And I think they're in the last throes of that. If they're not, then I'll probably not be sat in front of you again. That's the reality of it.
So this is a fingers crossed exercise. It's not, nobody's sitting here with great confidence and faith, are they?
No, but it's better to have a potential deal on the cards than not. And if that turns out to be a cock and bull story, well, that'll be out in the wash this weekend because we won't be playing. Won't we? That's how imminent it is. However, if it isn't a cock and bull story, which I hopefully believe, and I'm not naive, I'm too old and ugly to be naive, to think that, they're spinning a yarn. I don't think they are. I think they've genuinely got somebody. And as business goes, as the Kenny Rogers song says in The Gambler, you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them, and that's what looks like is happening out there. I'm a country and western fan, remember that part.
You mentioned Warriors needs a reboot, to use your expression. I mean, okay, Warriors are taking all the headlines for financial reasons at the moment, but they're not the only club in the Premiership with huge problems. Does the whole Premiership need a reboot, or professional rugby at the top level?
Well, again, it's a question that I was asked a few weeks ago, and the model obviously doesn't work financially. I mean, we create some fantastic rugby players. I think the academies work, but I don't think Exeter and maybe Leicester are unique in the fact that they were the ones pre-COVID that made slight profits and have big crowds. But it's a continual process, and I don't know what works. I don't know. I've been involved all my life, more so than many people, playing, coaching right the way through from 1990, and I've never ever not been in a rugby club for less than 5 days a week in 32 years. But even I, and wealthier and more knowledgeable people than me, are struggling with it, aren't they? Because that's why, as you look in your publications last week, a lot of clubs are losing money. A lot of clubs have taken the help from the government, DCMS, which was rightly taken, I think. But just like everything in life, the politicians struggle, the club owners are struggling. They're just taking on debt to have to pay back later on. So you're just putting it on the next owner or the next generation, so to speak. I don't know the answer. I wish I did. If I did, I'd probably have somebody doing this job, not me doing it, working for me.